Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the cracked leather sandals of someone you probably never imagined you'd be. A candle maker in ancient Rome. It's just before sunrise in a gritty neighborhood called Subura, where the city never truly sleeps. But most of it snores aggressively. The air smells like smoke, sweat, and something unidentifiably fishy, and your mattress. It's basically a sack of straw with fleas that have unionized. You live in one of the top floors of an insular, famous Roman apartment blocks that were more flammable than a toga in a torch factory. No elevators, no plumbing, and yes, the walls are thin enough to hear your neighbor's goat chewing. You've got a long day ahead, your back already aches, and the wax stains on your tunic never really come out. Also, sorry, but you probably won't survive long in this job. The fumes alone might get you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The street is still dark when you wake, though the faint grey of dawn is just beginning to seep through the wooden shutters. Not that it matters, you can already hear the city murmuring to life. A cartwheel creaks somewhere far below, a dog barks, and someone is shouting about stolen sandals. You've grown, roll over on your itchy pallet, and immediately regret it. Your shoulders still sore from hauling barrels of tallow yesterday. There's no time to waste. You sit up, shake off the sleep, and reach for your tunic. It smells faintly of smoke and beeswax door. To constant companions, the hem is stiff with dried wax. You pull it on anyway. It's either this or the one with the enormous scorch hole in the back. You splash a bit of tepid water on your face from the clay bowl near your bed and try not to look directly at the mold creeping across the wall. Outside, your door, it's a precarious descent down 4 flights of rickety wooden stairs. The insula sways a little in the morning wind. Normal, probably. The stairwell smells like old cabbage, damp plaster, and someone's forgotten chamber pot. You step carefully. One wrong move, and you'll be part of the floor below's breakfast. The alley beyond your building is already alive with motion. The baker across the way has begun heating his ovens, sending out a plume of warm, yeasty air that mingles with the far less pleasant stench from the nearby tanner's yard. You wrinkle your nose and keep moving, careful to avoid the puddles that are definitely not rainwater. Subura is noisy even at this hour. Known for its tangled streets and Tangier personalities, this district is Rome's gritty, hearter mix of street vendors, poets, pickpockets, and priests. It's also where the cheaper candle shops cluster, yours included. It's not the worst neighborhood, but let's just say you keep your coin pouch tucked very close as you make your way down the narrow street. You dodge a pair of bickering washerwomen, carrying sloshing baskets, then narrowly avoid a donkey cart hauling barrels of garum, the fermented fish sauce that Romans put on everything. You can smell it before you see it. Reaching your workshop, you lift the simple wooden latch and step inside. The place is dim and cool, a welcome break from the already rising sun outside. The space is tight, half storage, half workspace. You have a long bench for pouring and trimming, a fire pit for melting wax, and shelves filled with molds, jars of wicks, and various grades of fat. The air is thick with the familiar smells of tallow, soot, and beeswax. You take a deep breath. It smells like work. You're not alone. Your apprentice, Publisa, skinny teenager with more hair than senses, already poking at the fire pit with a long stick. He looks up when you enter. "Master," he says, voice cracking slightly. "The wax is nearly ready." You nod, hang up your satchel, and move to check the day's orders scratched into a wax tablet on the wall. First up, a small batch of beeswax tapers for a wealthy merchant's shrine. He insists on beeswax, only none of that common tallow stuff that smokes and sputters like a dying torch. Beeswax is purer, burns longer, and smells faintly sweet. It's also 3 times more expensive. Naturally, you'll be charging him 4 times the normal rate. Next, several bundles of cheap tallow candles for a tavern down near the Forum. These will burn fast, stink up the room, and leave greasy smoke trails on the walls. But they're cheap. The tavern owner doesn't care. He just wants his patrons to be able to see the dice they're cheating with. You also spot a new note scribbled by your neighbor, Flavia, the herbalist. She wants a single candle with room to embed dried herbs, lavender and bay, she says. Something about keeping away bad dreams. You smile. She's a bit eccentric, but her orders always smell nice. You roll up your sleeves, check the molds for last night's batches, and start inspecting the wicks. These are made from twisted flax fibers, carefully dried and cut to length. You can't just toss any old string into a candle. The wick's size and material control how fast the candle burns and whether it drips. Like a leaky amphora. Publius accidentally knocks over a jar of chopped wicks. You sigh. That's the 3rd time this week, you mutter. He blushes and scrambles to clean it up. As the fire begins to heat the pot of wax, the scent shifts from sharp smoke to warm, golden sweetness. Beeswax has that effect. It smells faintly like summer fields and old wood. You gently stir the pot with a wooden paddle, watching as the lumps slowly dissolve into a clear amber pool. Now comes the careful part. You pour the wax into the waiting MOLD bronze cylinders lined with parchment to help release the finished candles. Some candle makers prefer dipping, but you've always liked the control of molds. As you work, your mind wanders. Historians still argue whether the Romans invented the dipped taper method or borrowed it from the Etruscans. Either way, you're glad they did dippings faster. But your molds let you shape candles into little coils, spirals, even animals. The merchant's wife once requested candles shaped like Cupid's backside. You did it. You're not proud. By mid-morning, the shop smells like hot wax and singed flax. Publius has singed his sleeve again. You tell him to soak it in vinegar before it catches fully, and he scurries off. The sun is up now, shining slantwise through the wooden shutters, striping the floor with golden bands. The city outside has risen to full volume, vendors shouting, carts rumbling, someone playing a pond pipe terribly off-key. A boy from the bakery next door brings over a warm honey cake payment for last week's candles. You break off a piece and savor the sweet, spongy texture. It sticks to your teeth, but in a good way. There's still much to do, including a rush order that just came in. A patrician family is hosting a feast tonight, and they need dozens of beeswax tapers for their atrium. You'll need to find more wax, and quickly. Supplies have been tight lately. blame the beekeepers and their stingy hives. And then there's the matter of the temple order. The local priest wants blessed candles for a ritual tomorrow morning. He wants them infused with myrrh and frankincense, fragrant and sacred. You'll have to stop by the herbalist's stall on your midday run. You glance at the clock well, the shadow line cast by your sundial tile. Time to head out and gather more supplies. You pack a small coin pouch, tuck it deep in your tunic, and prepare for the wild ride that is the Roman market. As you step outside into the blinding light, a shout echoes from above, "Look out!" And you sidestep just in time to avoid a bucket of, well, let's just say used water. It splashes onto the cobblestones beside you with a horrible squelch. Publius, emerging behind you, wrinkles his nose. "Every day," he mutters. You nod grimly. "And every day we survive it, barely." The market waits. So do the pickpockets, the fish sellers, the gossiping matrons, and the city's swirling chaos. You adjust your belt, brace yourself, and step into the fray. The sun has fully asserted its presence now, and the streets of Rome swell with the usual cocktail of noise, smells, and arguments about produce prices. You press into the crowd like a drop of wax into hot water, absorbed instantly. Your sandals slap against the cobbles as you weave past butchers, barbers, and beggars, all shouting in some register of panic or persuasion. Your destination is the Macellum, the main market, where you're hoping to score some decent tallow without getting swindled, sneezed on, or stabbed. A tall order, really. You pass a man hawking miracle dates from Syria, a woman smacking an eel against her stall table for dramatic effect, and a senator's spoiled son demanding fresh figs in a month that clearly doesn't offer them. You mutter a half-hearted prayer to Mercury, the god of commerce, thieves, and travelers, because let's be honest, this place is ruled by all three. The market is a tangle of canvas awnings, shouting vendors, and smells ranging from divine to diabolical. Somewhere between the cinnamon seller and the man roasting dormice over a brazier is your tallow man, Marcus, a perpetually greasy figure who insists on calling you artisan, which is technically true but feels like a trap. He sees you and grins, showing more gum than tooth. "Ah, artisan, come to buy the finest cow fat in Rome." You wrinkle your nose and peer into the tub he's gesturing at. It's moist, but usable. "How fresh is it?" you ask, trying not to breathe in too deeply. He shrugs. "It was a cow this week." You hand over a few coins and he tosses in a bonus scoop for loyalty, which you strongly suspect is just whatever he scraped off the bottom of the bin. But it'll do. Next, you duck into a narrow alley to find the herbalist's stall. Flavia's not there. Her teenage daughter is minding the shop and trying to read a love poem while sorting bundles of rosemary. You wait patiently, listening to the drone of bees around the hanging bundles of lavender and mint. When you mention the priest's candle order, she lights up and disappears into the back, returning with a carefully wrapped satchel of resins and dried petals. You tuck them into your satchel. The scent is strong and clings to your tunic like a cloud of incense as you turn back. Toward the workshop, a pair of street performers blocks your path. One's juggling amphora fragments, while the other plays a crooked lyre. They're both wearing masks, one grinning and one weeping classic Roman theatre. You pause just long enough to drop a coin in their jar. Superstition demands it. Otherwise, you'll drop something yourself today, and it'll probably be molten wax. You arrive back at your shop, a little sweatier, a little poorer, and miraculously unpecketed. Publius is perched on a stool, trimming the bases of cooled candles with a paring knife and whistling a song you're certain is about goats. You unload the tallow and herbs and roll your shoulders, ready to stink up the place. Publius groans. Not the tallow batch, ... Yes, the tallow batch. Tallow. Candles are the bread and butter of your work. They burn faster, cost less, and smoke more, but every innkeeper, temple, and tenement family wants them. You fetch the iron cauldron from its hook and start feeding small hunks of beef fat into it. Like offerings to a particularly unglamorous deity, the fire sputters, then catches, and within minutes, the shop smells like a butcher's armpit on a summer day. Publius wraps a damp cloth around his nose. Historians should study this stench, he mutters. Historians still argue whether early Christians used tallow for sacred candles, you reply. But they definitely argued about the smell. You stir the melting fat, watching it break down into a greasy pool that bubbles like some mythical swamp. Bits of gristle float too. The top, you skim them off with practiced ease, dropping them into a side bowl for later. Flavia uses them in her more dubious remedies. As the tallow melts, you prep the wicks. You and Publius stretch the flax cords, dip them briefly in vinegar and old trick to reduce smoke, and hang them from the crossbars above the molds. Each mold gets filled with the hot, stinking liquid, and you brace the wicks upright with little sticks balanced like chopsticks. After an hour of pouring and swearing and swatting away flies, the molds are full. Now comes the drying phase. You set the molds near the shaded wall and fan them with a reed mat. The scent of herbs from your earlier purchase still lingers, barely masking the reek of boiled fat. Publius escapes outside for fresh air, and you take a break too, wiping sweat from your brow and collapsing onto a low stool. You nibble the remains of your honey cake and watch a lizard sunbathe near the doorway. Then a voice calls your name, loud, nasal, and unmistakably irritated. It's Lucilla, the merchant's wife. She marches into the shop like she owns it, her sandals slapping with purpose. Why, she demands. Do the candles you made last week lean slightly to the left? You blink, because your table isn't level. She glares. You offer a more diplomatic answer. Perhaps some humidity in the wax. I'll ensure this batch is symmetrical enough to light a Senate debate. She eyes you a moment longer, then huffs and departs with the grace of a poorly balanced chariot. Next time she complains, give her a candle that spins, Publius suggests, poking his head back in. You smirk but say nothing. Clients are clients, no matter how flame-obsessed. After the tallow batch, you return to the beeswax. It's cooled into golden blocks overnight, ready to be reheated and infused with herbs for the priest's special order. You place the blocks into a smaller bronze pot and add a generous pinch of crushed frankincense, myrrh, and a few lavender petals for good measure. As the wax melts, the scent transforms rich, earthy, calming, a far cry from the meat stew you just endured. You close your eyes and let the aroma soothe your frazzled nerves. Publius, meanwhile, is trying to carve a candle into the shape of a dolphin. It's not going well. You know dolphins don't have beaks, right? You ask gently. He stares at the lumpy result. It's symbolic, Of what? Struggle. Fair enough. By now, the sun is leaning westward, the light golden and full of dust. You finish pouring the priest's candles, each one filled with fragrant promise and slightly crooked dignity. The molds line up on the shelf like tiny soldiers, awaiting judgment. There's a lull, now a rare and fragile silence. You and Publius both sit back, hands wax-stained, arms sore, eyes drooping. The shop hums with the heat of a day nearly done. You think about dinner. Maybe olives and bread, if the vendor still has any. Maybe a slice of roast chickpea cake, if you're lucky. Or maybe just a nap under the workbench. The peace doesn't last. A knock sounds at the door, 3 sharp raps, followed by a clatter. You open it to reveal a delivery boy holding a small crate. From the domus on Aventine Hill, he says, "Feast tonight. Urgent." You lift the lid to find a note. "Candles not tall enough last time. Needs improvement. Also, more symmetrical." Flames. Yes, really, you sigh. Symmetrical flames. Publius leans over your shoulder. "That's a new one. Well," you mutter, "let's get burning." By now, your muscles are one large ache wrapped in beeswax and regret. But there's no stopping, not with a rush order from a domos on Aventine Hill and a reputation to uphold. Apparently one that includes crafting candles with symmetrical flames. Whatever that means. You stretch your back with a satisfying pop and gather a few of your more elegant mold-staller ones, with grooves along the sides. They produce slender tapers that look sophisticated in marble hallways and smell slightly of money, which is to say, very faintly of imported myrrh and egotism. Publius has already stoked the fire. He's muttering to himself about a dream he had where candles could talk and one demanded better wicks. You don't press for details. While the wax warms again, you prep the workspace for speed. You arrange the molds, set out fresh wicks, and brace yourself with a swig of watered-down wine from a dented flask. It tastes like old grapes and bad decisions. Perfect. The first pour is smooth, steady, and golden. Beeswax always pours like honey made of sunlight, and for a moment the job feels noble alchemical. Even you're not just making light, you're distilling warmth from the world itself. Then Publius knocks over a ladle and the illusion vanishes. The candles for the Aventine Domus have to be perfect, or at least tall, straight, and you shape the tops while the wax is still pliable, smoothing each one like a pastry chef with a grudge. The molds are cooling on a wooden rack by the door, and you pray to Vesta they don't warp. But just as things seem to be settling into a rhythm, a loud creak comes from above. "Not again," you mutter. It's the shelf, the old, overburdened storage shelf, holding nearly 30 finished candles, cheap tallow ones, bound for a taverness, listing to the side. Slowly, majestically, like a drunken senator giving a speech. You lunge toward it, but gravity is faster. The whole thing collapses in a crash of wax, splinters, and ruined inventory. Publius winces. Should I pretend that was a new artistic direction? You stare at the carnage. Dozens of candles, dented, cracked, or snapped. A pile of shame. No, you sigh. You should pretend you're fixing it. He grabs a hammer and starts patching the leg while you salvage what you can. Some of the candles might be remelted, others trimmed down into stubby emergency tapers. Still, it's a loss. You mentally subtract a few coins from your already dismal weekly earnings, and then, as if summoned by the sound of chaos. In walks him, the priest from the temple of Apollo, eyes narrowed, robes swishing, and mouth already puckering into judgment. "Are my sacred candles ready?" he demands, scanning the room as if inspecting for heresy. You gesture to the drying shelf, infused with lavender, myrrh, and the tears of a mildly annoyed apprentice. The priest sniffs one. It smells ... acceptable. But are they sanctified? You pause. They're beeswax. That's as pure as you'll get, unless you want to bathe them in goat's milk. He considers this. No need. Just make sure they burn without flickering. Apollo hates flicker. Of course, you say, symmetrical. Flames, no flicker. Divine approval guaranteed, or your denarii back. He actually chuckles at that. A miracle in itself. He takes the candles, leaves a small pouch of coins that might be the correct amount, and departs in a rustle of sanctimonious linen. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Did we just pass a divine inspection? Publius asks. Barely. Vesta blessed those herbs. They hid the smell of panic. A lull settles again, temporary. Always. You glance at the sundial shard leaning against the windowsill. It's just past midday. Time to brave the streets once more. You've got broken candles to replace, supplies to fetch, and a half-promised bundle of rushlights to barter for from. The reed cutter by the Tiber, stepping into the Roman sun, feels like entering a kill. The streets shimmer with heat and bustle. You wrap a strip of linen around your head to keep sweat out of your eyes and begin the trek toward the river market. The stalls here are more haphazard, the vendors louder and sweatier. You find the reed cutter, a surly man named Junius, sorting bundles like he's grading scrolls. You ask about your order. Rushes are thin this season, he mutters, handing over a pitiful bundle. Blame the gods, or the fish, or both. You inspect the rushes usable, barely. He wants more coin than last time. Next flood, you tell him, I'll just float downstream and pick them myself. He laughs, spits in the dirt, and waves you off. Business concluded. Back through the forum you go. You pause to admire a new statue of some minor nobleone of those short-lived senators with a too long name and a habit of posing shirtless in marble. His expression is heroic. You suspect his real voice sounded like a goat being stepped on as you pass through a shaded colonnade. A cluster of old men argue heatedly about olive oil taxes. One insists that Caesar himself would have never taxed oil. Another claims Caesar never bathed. The third says Caesar was a candle in human form, bright, but short-lived. You keep walking. A cart nearly clips your elbow. You curse softly in a blend of Latin and personal flair. The donkey pulling it looks apologetic. You forgive the donkey. Back at the shop, you find that Publius has, against all odds, repaired the shelf and restacked the surviving candles. He's also tried to carve a second dolphin. This one looks like a melted slug. Better, you lie gently. You spend the next hour repouring the ruined tavern batch. You work quickly, no time for fancy shapes. Just basic cylinders that burn fast and dirty. The molds fill up in a rhythm almost like breathing. You're halfway through when a neighbor fishmonger named Callia leans in the doorway holding a small bundle. Can you make me a candle with crab shells inside? She asks. You blink. For what purpose? She shrugs. I like the texture. You nod solemnly. Crustacean, couture. I'll see what I can do. By late afternoon, the shop is once again filled with the smells of wax, sweat, and distant fish. You deliver the event in candles, packed carefully in straw-lined crates. A slave from the household meets you at the gate and eyes the delivery like you might be sneaking in a curse. "These better not lean," he mutters. "They're straighter than your master's morals." You reply under your breath, "Back home if." Your one-room loft counts as home. You drop your satchel by the door and strip off your wax-stiffened tunic. Your arms are splattered, your hands sticky, your legs aching from standing all day. But the light in your shop windows is golden, glowing, almost magical. And the candles, well, they'll flicker tonight over lovers' dinners, temple rituals, dice games, and midnight poetry. Some might even burn long into the night, until only a pool of warm wax remains. You light one on your windowsill and watch the flame dance. Asymmetrical, of course, but beautiful. The air grows heavier as late afternoon deepens into evening. A low haze clings to the rooftops, painting everything in dusty gold. Somewhere, a chorus of cicadas begins their nightly humming, and in your workshop, the last batch of candles for the day glisten in their molds like waxen soldiers ready for duty. You'd admire them longer if your lower back weren't staging a full revolt. You stretch your arms overhead and consider collapsing onto a sack of sawdust. But a knock at the door interrupts that fantasy. Again, that's time. It's a boy from the bakery, red-faced and panting. He holds out a flat board on which rests a single broken taper, snapped clean in two. From the brothel near Circus Maximus, he gasps. They need replacements. Tonight. You look at the pitiful stub of candle. Then at the boy. You ran through half the city carrying this like a sacred relic. He nods, still wheezing. Mistress said, "You'd know. The right size and smell." Of course she did. That brothel is famous for its ambience-perfumed pillows, silk drapes, and mood lighting courtesy of your humble wax artistry. The madam insists on lavender-scented beeswax with a hint of fig. You once tried sandalwood instead, and she threatened to smear you in honey and toss you into the gladiator pits. So you set to work. Again, Publius groans. "We just cleaned everything. Lavender and fig, you say." She's very specific about her candles. He mutters. You raise a brow. About everything. The pot goes back on the flame, and into it goes the beeswax, some crushed fig leaves, and just a pinch of dried lavender from Flavia's stash. The shop smells like a bakery married a garden, and for a fleeting moment, it's not half bad. As the wax melts, you trim the fresh wicks and set out the domed molds that make those smooth, elegant brothel tapers. No sharp corners, no harsh edges. Like lighting romance in wax form, the sun begins its descent as you pour. Light fades from your window, replaced by the golden hue of your own candlelight. It's poetic, really your work, replacing the sun, and then disaster strikes. Publius knocks over a jug of water. Not just any water, the water you were planning to use for cooling the molds evenly. It crashes to the floor with a splash that instantly dampens 3 trays of freshly poured tapers. The wax seizes. By Jupiter's flaming, you begin. Then catch yourself. No yelling, that's rule 1. He stares, wide-eyed. What's rule 2? Don't ask about rule 1 while standing in a puddle. You salvage what you can. Some candles are ruined, now covered with water-pocked bubbles and faint cracks. Those go into the discount bin, which is really just a box near the door labeled imperfections of the gods. You've sold a surprising number that way, but time is tight. You remelt, repour, and somehow miraculously produce a dozen. Perfectly glossy, fragrant, emotionally evocative candles in time for delivery. You wrap them carefully in cloth and hand them to the bakery boy, who now smells faintly of lavender himself. Tell her, you say, they'll burn for hours, even with open windows. He nods like he's been entrusted with scrolls of state. Secrets, and runs off, sandals slapping. Publius collapses on the stool. If I ever open a shop, it'll be for dry goods. Something that doesn't melt or explode. You ruffle his hair, or get judged by flame height. There's barely time to breathe before the next knock. This time, it's not a boy, not a priest, not even Lucilla. It's him, Gaius, Felix, your wealthiest, most maddening client. Dressed in a tunic so white it's a hazard to the eyes, he steps inside with a theatrical flourish and the faint scent of imported cinnamon. I require a candle shaped like a lion, he announces. You stare at him, do you? He nods, pleased with himself. For a dinner party. Symbolism, majesty. You understand. Sure, you say, do you want it roaring or reclining? Roaring, of course. Reclining is for cats. You don't bother asking why. Gaius's requests rarely make sense until you hear them repeated by equally absurd dinner guests. You fetch your carving knife, a block of partially cooled beeswax, and begin shaping what will become the least intimidating lion in Rome. Publius watches. It looks like a sheep. It's mid-roar, you say defensively. It's mid-existential. Crisis, he counters. Still, you persist. The lion takes shape, or at least, vaguely leonine form. It'll melt in 20 minutes, and nobody will care. But Gaius thanks you like you've sculpted a bust of Jupiter himself. He tosses you a silver coin and departs, humming some popular tavern tune, finally, for the first time in what feels like a week. The shop is quiet. You sit on the bench, stretch your legs, and close your eyes. Outside, the sounds of evening float through the shutters. Laughter, footsteps, distant lyres. The city is winding down in that unique Roman way, slowly, noisily. And with food, you light a single candle and let the room fill with its warm glow. The scent is subtle, the flame steady, the shadows soft. Historians still argue whether ancient Romans really valued candlelight or saw it as purely utilitarian. You know better. You've seen how they lean in around a single flame, how they pause just a little longer when it flickers. You've made candles for temples and taverns, for funerals and first kisses. And now, as the sun finally dips behind the Palatine, your final job awaits, a late-night delivery to a villa at the edge of the Aventine Hill. You packed the candles these for a wake. The client had said, nothing fancy, just enough to light a procession down the stone road. You carry the box carefully, each taper swaddled in cloth. Outside, Rome has gone violet blue. Street vendors are packing up, beggars settling into doorways, and windows flickering. To life, one flame at a time, you pass a group of children chasing a hoop down a back alley, laughing as they vanish into the shadows. A dog snoozes on a doorstep. A baker leans against his wall, arms powdered in flour, chewing on a date. The funeral procession is just beginning as you arrive. Silent, respectful. A line of mourners dressed in grey and white, each holding one of your candles. The flames flicker gently in the wind, steady, solemn, soft. You watch from the edge of the street as they move past, your handiwork lighting their way into the night. You don't follow. Your work is done by the time you return to your workshop. The city is dark except for scattered lamps and the occasional torch. You stoke the coals one last time, enough to warm a pot of lentils and soften a scrap of bread. It's not a feast, but it's warm. It's yours. Publius is asleep in the corner, a candle stub still clutched in one wax-streaked hand. You smile, cover him with a spare cloth, and settle onto your pallet. You light one last taper and place it in the holder beside your bed. Its flame dances gently, casting long shadows that ripple across the walls. The city outside hums with late night, murmurs, but here in your little shop, all is still. And finally, with your fingers smelling of lavender and ash, your legs too tired to twitch, and your heart filled with the simple pride of a day's work done, you let your eyes close. Dawn creeps back into Rome with the quiet boldness of someone who doesn't need to knock. Pale light filters through your shutters as you stir on your pallet. The candle stub by your bed having long since extinguished itself into a smooth pool of wax. You blink, groan softly, and roll onto your back only to feel something small and cylindrical beneath your shoulder. A candle, of course. You gently toss it across the room, where it lands with a dull thunk near a bucket of flax scraps. Publius is still snoring softly in the corner, his leg twitching like he's chasing something in a dream. Probably a runaway wick. You decide to let him sleep a little longer. Yesterday's chaos earned you both that much, but Rome waits for no one. Not even candle makers. You sit up slowly, limbs protesting with every movement. Your knees crack like someone stepping on an old scroll. You toss on your tunics still stiff from wax and bearing a new, abstract stain you don't recognize, and splash cold water on your face. The chill jolts you fully awake, enough to notice. The street outside already pulsing with early voices and cartwheels. The air is crisp, the kind of morning that makes the smoke from a breakfast hearth smell like home. You open your door, just a crack, and a familiar figure shuffles past. Old Marius, the ex-legionary who lives 2 floors below. He tips his head in greeting, carrying his usual morning amphora of questionable wine and muttering to himself about the Gauls. You head downstairs carefully, this time avoiding the loose plank near the 2nd floor last week. It caught your sandal and nearly ended your candle-making career in one wobbly tumble. Outside, Subura is just beginning to stir. Vendors yawn behind carts stacked with olives and onions. A dog trots by with a chicken bone in its mouth like it won the civic games. A washerwoman dumps a basin of greyish water into the street, barely missing a sandal-clad courier who shouts something about curses and bad omens. You laugh to yourself. Another ordinary Roman morning back in your shop. You light the hearth and start warming wax for the day's first batch, this one for the Temple of Juno, where someone has finally decided that the sacred flame might need to be relit with something other than soot and complaints. You measure out the beeswax, still fragrant and golden, and add a dash of thyme and orange peel. Why? Because Juno's temple always smells slightly of stale incense, and you've decided the gods deserve better. As the wax melts, Publius finally stumbles in, hair sticking out like a straw broom. "Did we die?" he asks. "Not yet," you reply, "but the day's still young." He yawns, scratches his head, and starts checking the wicks, muttering to himself about lengths and symmetry like a wax-coated oracle. The shop is already warmer than outside, glowing gently from the hearth and the low morning light. You fall into the rhythm cut, dip, pour, trimmage, motion, automatic now, soothing, even sacred in its own way. While stirring the pot, you reflect on how this smelly, blistering, and oddly dangerous is the closest thing you have to peace. You're not a senator, a soldier, or a gladiator. You don't speak in the forum or dine in marble atriums, but you make light. You help others see through their darkness, literally, and that counts for something. Later in the morning, a group of performers stops by there, prepping for a play. At a villa and want candles that can flicker dramatically, but not melt too fast. You give them what you have, and tell them that candlelight can only do so much. The drama is on them. Not long after, a philosopher from Athens clearly looked into your shop and starts questioning the nature of illumination itself. Publius offers him a stubby taper and asks if he feels more enlightened. The man stares at it, says perhaps, and walks out without another word by midday. The sun is high, and you've finally caught up on your orders, for the first time. In days, you close the shop shutters and take a real lunch. Cheese, olives, and a crust of bread. Nothing fancy, but it tastes like triumph. You and Publius sit outside on the stoop, legs stretched out, watching a pair of cats wrestle over a piece of fish. You ever think about doing something else? He asks. You shrug. Sure, sometimes I dream about being a baker. At least their shop smells better. I thought about being a poet, he says, until I realized I hate rhymes. You chuckle. Then you're halfway there already. The rest of the day trickles by in slow wax-scented waves. A few clients stop by, a widow needing a memorial taper, a bride-to-be wanting something romantic, and a young boy trading a carved wooden charm for a stubby candle. He can sneak into bed for ghost stories. Each leaves with a bit of light. As the sun dips low once more, you prepare your final batch of the evening. Not for a client this time. These are for you. Small, sturdy tapers to last through the quiet hours. You pour them with care, let them cool, and light one as dusk swallows the city. From your windowsill, you watch Rome glow to life in soft orange pinpricks. Candles flicker in windows, along streets, within temples and homes. Your candles dot the city's chaos softens after dark. Voices drop, shadows stretch, and the heat lifts from the cobbles. You sit back, breathe deep, and allow yourself to feel the weight of the day finally settle, and you realize something. For all the burns, the spills, the smell of singed fat and lavender, there's a quiet kind of pride in what you do. You shape light, you bottle fire, you hold a piece of the sun, one wick at a time. You look at your hands calloused, wax-stained, and aching, and you smile, because in this city of marble and madness, of power and pageantry, you are a simple artisan, and that, somehow, is enough. And now, dear listener, as our final candle's flame begins to waver and settle It's time for you too to ease into the softness of sleep. You've spent a full Roman day walking the cobbled streets, ducking chamber pots, dodging donkeys, and stirring wax with the gentle patience of someone who knows that all good things come in slow, flickering warmth. You've filled molds by hand, endured the complaints of patricians, charmed a few difficult priests, and even shaped a rather lumpy lion for an over-ambitious dinner host. But most of all, you've brought light to a world that would otherwise stumble in the dark. Let that candlelight settle now behind your eyes. Let the hiss of cooling wax and the hum of distant cicadas blend together into one soft, steady breath. Let the quiet rhythm of Rome at night lull you, the way amber shadows once danced across plaster walls in tiny candlelit rooms. No more orders to fill, no more shelves to repair, just the glow of a single flame and the peace it brings. Your hands can rest, your legs can grow still, and your thoughts, those busy little flames, can dim just a little more with every breath. You're safe now, surrounded by the soft hum of a sleeping city and the gentle comfort of stories told by Firelight. Close your eyes, if you haven't already. Let the darkness come not with fear, but with calm. After all, even the best candles must be snuffed out, so they can shine again tomorrow. Sleep well, candle maker. Sweet dreams.